Welcome to Rock Your Reinvention, where I help high-achieving career women like you get unstuck, make your corporate exit strategy, and successfully transition to your next chapter. Hi, I'm your host, Karen Freeland, a certified life coach and corporate exit strategist. Whether you want to start a business, become a speaker, or something else, I'm here to give you the tools and strategies to shift your mindset, build your confidence, and take bold actions so you can rock your reinvention. Ready? Let's go. Hey, everybody, and welcome back to Rock Your Reinvention. I am so excited for today's guest. We have Julie Winkle-Giulioni with us, and she is a champion for workplace growth and development and helps executives and leaders optimize talent and potential within their organizations. She is one of Inc. magazine's top 100 speakers and the co-author of the international bestseller, Help Them Grow or Watch Them Go, Career Conversations Organizations Need and Employees Still Want. I am so excited to have this conversation today. Welcome to the show, Julie.
Thank you so much, Karen. I've been looking forward to this.
Me too. Well, we met probably quite some time ago now, maybe almost a year ago, in a group called Authoress. It's sort of exclusive, kind of invite only thing. And we have just gotten to know each other and both have a passion for career development, personal development, professional development, all that good stuff that is really necessary to rock your reinvention. And although we approach it slightly different, right? But I just thought this would be such a great conversation because there's two reasons I want to talk about this. One, for the female leaders that want and need high-performing teams, they want to lead better. They want to develop their talent so that they can shine as leaders, but also help that talent improve. And then I also really thought it would be helpful to look at it from the employee perspective and how we can learn to take the reins and own our development instead of waiting for your manager or someone else to make these moves happen for you. So I think we'll kind of take the conversation with those two lenses, and it'll be really fruitful for everybody listening.
Great. Let's do it.
All right. The first thing I would love to shed a little light on is the inspiration behind Help Them Grow or Watch Them Go, and what motivated you to write it and now update this. You're on your third edition.
We are. Yeah. The first edition came out back in 2012. And I think the inspiration for our two, subsequent editions is really consistent with what caused us to want to write this in the first place. And it's the reality that career development is probably the most important and the most intimate way we as leaders engage with people in the workplace. It's the most transformative of the activities we engage in. And I've really come to think of career development as this Swiss Army knife, because it's the one thing as leaders that we do that delivers so many different outcomes, from engagement to discretionary effort, to sales, to service, to retention. I mean, the list goes on. And so, especially for busy leaders, who are so time-starved, if we can give them one tool that they can easily deploy to achieve all of that, it's such a gift and such an important thing for leaders to have. So that was kind of the initial inspiration that's woven through. And of course, now when we were asked to update it, we looked around and realized a few things have happened over the last 5 years. And while career development is still, an important priority, how it happens is through a different lens. It's in a different context. And so that's really what this latest edition is all about.
Yeah, I love this idea of the Swiss Army knife and being able to really hit a lot of needs of the business with one tool. And you used the word at the beginning, transformative. Like, career development can be transformative. But I bet 90% of the people listening right now are like, oh, really, Karen? Let me tell you about the situations I've had with career development. I'm pretty sure it was anything but transformative experience. So maybe that's another great place to start, is thinking about the misconceptions that are out there. And those probably need to be cleared up a little bit, right? And you say in your book, administrative compliance with paperwork and processes is not career development. And I would say you are very much correct. So, how are you defining career development that makes it transformative in today's work environment?
I love this question so much, Karen, because you're right. So many leaders have been kind of brainwashed into thinking if I do the process, then okay, I've got career development off my plate until next year this time.
Right. It's the
And
check the box. Just keep
exactly,
checking it off. I got this employee done, this one done. Okay, I can move on now.
exactly. And I can get back to business now.
Yeah.
But I have not talked to a single human being on the planet around, and I've literally gone around the world getting to talk about this stuff. I've not talked to a single human being who said, you know, what really helped me to grow and what really got me ready for where I am today for, rocking it is that IDP conversation I had with old Mr. Whatever back in 1992. I mean,
Yeah.
that is not how people grow, and so what I've come to really recognize through working in this space, and I'm sure you're finding it too, that at the end of the day, career development is defined as a relationship. It's a
Mhm.
relationship that an employee and a manager have. And that relationship plays out through conversation. And
Mhm.
when we have leaders who are able to keep that thread of conversation going, so it's about how they show up rather than what they do once a year and check off the list, those are the leaders who are really making a difference for their people and making a difference for the business as well.
Yeah. And I'm curious, would you say that it is conversation mixed with action? And the reason I say that is I have a lot of conversations as a career coach. I mean, that's literally what I do all day is have conversations with women. But I get to a point with some of my clients where they're like, okay, I got to think about this some more. And I'm like, no, sister, you do not need to think anymore. We've thought and we've talked enough. We've had enough conversations. You're clear on this vision. You're clear on your next steps. Now we need to take some action. We need to test drive this theory, these thoughts. So it's like, okay, you sit down with somebody and they say, I think I really want to explore marketing or operations. It's like, great. Let's start taking some actions in that direction and dip our toe in the water to see if that actually fits with your vision. I mean, does that resonate? Is that kind of how you position this with people?
Yeah, without a doubt. So the conversation is what builds the awareness on the part of the
Mm-hmm.
individual and the leader. It builds the motivation, it builds the interest, and ultimately it should spark the action that's required. And what so many of us, women and men alike for that matter, it can feel so immobilizing.
Mm-hmm.
Career feels like a really big word, a heavy idea. And in today's workplace, that's so uncertain for many people, the idea of taking any action can be, really scary. I mean, feel really threatening on a fundamental level. And so as I'm encouraging people to take that action, even action, I mean, that feels like, ooh, that's big. I'm putting a flag in the sand. What I talk more about is experiments.
Yeah.
So let's just do a little experiment. Because with an experiment, sometimes your hypothesis works, sometimes it doesn't. We're keeping it small, so the stakes are low, and it feels a little less daunting than making huge steps forward.
Sure. Yeah. And sometimes we need those baby steps, right? Just to build up our confidence, even.
For sure.
Yeah. Okay. So I love this because you brought up also in your book the importance of psychological safety in career development conversations. And we just kind of said it, but I would argue that employees really need psychological safety in all of their business interactions to some extent. But can you tell us more about what that actually looks like and how we can foster psychological safety with our teams?
Yeah, yeah. And you're absolutely right. Psychological safety undergirds the entire relationship between manager and leader, among all of us for that matter. What's unique about the learning, the development, the growth space is that learning is risky business. It's a little scary, as we were saying, to step out and do something different, to try a new skill, to learn a new way of doing something, to explore a new context for using those skills with the opportunity for failure. And so leaders who create psychological safety create the space for people to be able to take those risks with the level of confidence that somebody's got their back, that
Yeah.
there is that safety net. I was talking to somebody the other day who worked with Cirque du Soleil. And they were talking about the fact that underneath those high wire acts, there's a net. And the performers report that without the net, they're going to play it safe. They're going to do the moves that they can confidently deliver on.
Hmm.
With and of course, there are OSHA requirements too, so that's a whole other thing.
Sure.
But with the net, they have the confidence to go a little farther, to do that extra twist or turn or whatever. And so psychological safety really is that net that your manager's got your back. Your manager understands that there's a possibility of failure and it's not going to be fatal. And that they are going to help you through it and extract the learning from it so that people really have that level of assuredness that it's okay to try something new.
Yeah, and we all do need that reassurance that this is okay. This isn't going to make or break your career. It's not over if you explore this area and you decide you don't like it. And I don't think many of us are getting those messages. This is just one story that I thought of as you were talking, and it wasn't a conversation about career development, but I was brand new to the leadership team, and this was not a choice of the senior vice president that I was reporting to, but it was kind of like a global move to remove the centralization of the marketing function and roll them into the region leaders. And I remember going to the call the first day, and literally this man is like, yeah, Karen's going to be joining us on some calls going forward. I don't really think she should report to me. I can't really help her as the marketing person because marketing isn't really my thing, but that's how the other regions want it. So she's going to be here in our calls. And I was like, wow,
Welcome.
wow, awesome to be part of the team. Okay. And it was just that blow, not only to my confidence, but just like, what am I doing? Is this even the world that I want to live in anymore? Do I even want to be part of this organization? I mean, the answer was no. It was a very clear no for me, but it really was kind of one of those things like, if you're not going to be on board with my growth and you're not going to welcome me into the team, then I'm going to go.
Yeah. And that's the problem. I think a lot of leaders don't understand. They don't appreciate the impact of their behavior. I would venture to guess that leader would be blown away to hear this story today and to
Hmm.
understand that what they did resulted in you leaving.
Yeah.
Leaders don't realize the power that they have over the experience that
Right.
we as employees ultimately have.
Yeah.
And the leaders who do appreciate that and wield that power wisely, they're the ones who are rocking the business results, keeping their teams, and really creating a joyful workplace for people.
Mhm. Yeah, so true, so true. And it's interesting because I think some leaders, they just don't know how to fit it all in, right? And I'm using air quotes there, but they're just trying to keep their own head above water. We call it CYA. I don't know if that translates to other people, like cover your ass, right? Just make sure that you don't screw up because everything is so reactionary. Like no one is really thinking a year out, 2 years out. Everyone's just like, oh, this happened yesterday and now we need to fix it. So they think they don't have time for career development, that IDP conversation, which is obviously a big mistake. Are there other mistakes that managers make when it comes to career development, and how can we help them avoid these mistakes?
Yeah, and the one that you just mentioned, Karen, time, it's the number one. When we first wrote the book, we did some research, and 3 to 1, that is the biggest impediment or barrier to managers engaging in career development. And you're right, we don't have the time not to do it. But if we keep thinking about career development as a task to be done, that's when we don't have time for it and when it keeps getting moved down the to-do list.
Right.
So when it comes to that particular challenge, the opportunity as a leader is to shift our mindset from it's something we do to how we show up and something that we can infuse into the envelopes of time we're already spending with people. You have to do a one-on-one every couple of weeks, right? You can slip some development in there, just some great questions. Take just 5 minutes of that time, and suddenly you've elevated it and amplified it, giving it that development twist. Or when you pass someone in the hallway, you're gonna say, hey, how's it going? Whatever. Shift it to, tell me one great thing that went on in your work today. Or, what are you loving? What are you doing that's really bringing you joy? Just small shifts like that to use the time that we're already using with folks more wisely is key. So time is absolutely the number one impediment. The other one that really is causing a lot of managers to avoid or delay engaging in these conversations is this misconception, this assumption that everybody wants a promotion.
Yes.
And of course, if that's the mindset I'm going in with, by definition, we never have enough promotions for everybody who wants to grow. So a lot of managers just figure, okay, that's what they want. I can't give it to them. Let me just not even stir the pot here. And the truth is, again, research from my other book, we find that when we help people expand their definition of what development looks like and the ways they can grow, promotions are actually much less important to people. People are much less interested. In fact, of 8 different dimensions, climbing the corporate ladder is actually last, according to our global research. Whereas other things like amplifying contribution and challenge and competence, things that managers can say yes to, that's what people are really looking for today.
Oh, that's powerful. Because I think there's a lot of people who just think, okay, career development equals promotion, climbing the ladder. And I talk to a lot of women that are in a different season of life right now. And they're like, I don't need to make all this money anymore. I don't need all this headache. I want to take a downshift, which I wish we could come up with a better word for that, because even downshift feels like right? But it's like, yeah, there's nothing wrong with that. What season of life are you in? What are your goals and your ambitions inside of work and outside of work? And let's get you in the position that lights you up and has you doing the kind of work that you enjoy, and not worry about ego or what other people are going to think, but really just get yourself in the seat that's going to be best for you.
Yeah. Oh gosh, that's such powerful work, Karen. So important for us to recognize that, because a lot of us have just been raised to mindlessly, climb that ladder. That's the conditioning that we've been exposed to. And it's really a gift, for instance, when you're working with your clients, to be able to give them permission to lose the ladder. Stop thinking about the social implications and all of that. But what do you want to do? What's going to bring you joy now
Yeah,
in this season?
exactly. Now, it would be nice if leaders would prioritize our development, but that might be some wishful thinking. As you say in your book, we spend more than 40 hours a week dedicating our body, our minds, and our souls to the cause. So a little attention is not too much to ask. But if career coaching has taught me one thing, it's that we disempower ourselves when we wait for others to change or we wait for circumstances to change. So if employees are maybe listening right now and someone is like, I'm not getting those interactions that I need, my boss never wants to talk about this or have a conversation, what can they do to empower themselves so that they don't have to just sit there and wait and feel like they're helpless?
Yeah, yeah. I think probably 3 priority actions or
Mhm.
experiments
Sure.
could help. The first is, don't make assumptions. I think it is so easy for an employee who's not getting the experience of development to make assumptions about what that means, the value they have to the organization. I mean, you can get into your head and make up all sorts of stories. Normally, the story is your manager never got great development, him or herself. They don't know what good looks like. They're doing their best and they just don't have the skills. So if you could go in with that assumption rather than all the other stories that we tell ourselves, it kind of cleans the table and creates a much better environment for the conversation, because it's rarely about you as the employee at the end of the day. So that's the first thing. The second thing is to take the initiative to start the conversation, to go to your boss and say, I am really interested in growing. And could we set aside some time? Not a lot of time. Do you have 5 or 10 minutes just to start talking a little bit about what might be possible? And the important thing about that is when we go in and open the door to that conversation, if we want to be able to enter the room and keep the conversation going beyond the door opening, we've got to make sure that we're framing it in a really non-threatening way, in a way that sets the manager up to be able to say yes. So going in and saying, I'd like to talk about growth because I'd like your job next year. That's
Yeah.
probably going to be the best, opening line. But going in to say, I'd love to talk about my development. I think there are some things that I might be able to learn and do that would help our team be more effective or whatever. When you get that, what's in it for them, when you can frame the development in terms of mutuality, this reciprocity, I get something, but you get something too. Managers cannot. I mean, that's just an unbeatable value proposition. And then the
Yeah.
third thing is come in with an idea. Don't come in with a blank slate and put it on the manager to figure out. Say, in light of the fact that I'd like to be able to contribute more and help our team, deliver more of the widgets or whatever, it dawns on me that if I could learn how to engage in financial planning, understand the financial piece
Yeah.
of it, I could make better decisions. So next budgeting season, could I help you? Could you use an extra set of hands crunching numbers? I just love to see behind the scenes. In that
Yeah.
way, the individual is getting the experience that they want, the expanded purview, the understanding so that they can grow and support the organization. And you're helping the manager in the process. So if we can think in terms of real reciprocity, what's in it for me, what's in it for them, it really opens up the possibility for the yeses that we're looking for.
And I always love, if you don't need to ask for permission, that's always great too, because you can ask for forgiveness. But what I mean by that is, I remember when I was in a director role, I reached out to the CFO and I just said, look, I really want to better understand I want to improve my financial acumen, and I want to understand what makes things on the P&L statement move. What's a good business decision? What's a bad business decision? How do I make better decisions in my role based off the P&L? So we set up, he's like, I would love to help you. That would be great. And that's part of my development, is to help develop our teams. So it was a total win-win for him. And we would just meet every month when the numbers came out for 30 minutes. He'd walk me through, share some anomalies, or this is why this is that way. And then I could go do my job better, knowing how the business was actually performing. And I learned a lot. But I didn't ask my boss, is it okay if I do this? Like, I just went straight to the CFO and said, this is what I'd like to do. Can we set aside time to do that?
I love that. And if the CFO was clever, he or she would use that time with you as the opportunity for them to review it as well. So we're back to that
Yeah.
time thing. So they don't have to take time in advance to review it. They get to double team, multitask, help you grow, look at the numbers together. I mean, it's just a beautiful win-win when we start thinking more strategically about
Yes.
how to incorporate development into the fabric of the work.
Yeah. And I mean, it goes back to what you said about time earlier. It's like, it's not that you don't have time for it. I mean, we all have time for revenue generating activities, right? You're not going to do something that doesn't, not, if your something generates revenue, you're going to do it for the business. Well, if you start seeing career development as a way to generate revenue for the business, it's going to be one of those things that you're going to bet that you do.
Yeah, yeah. Well
Yeah. And
said.
it's
Well said.
certainly going to save you money, because you're not going to have to keep dealing with turnover and trying to retain all these people.
Exactly. Exactly. And we're also in the process of helping people grow today. We're laying the foundation for tomorrow. I mean, you look around the corner, it's really uncertain. And we know
Yeah.
that vast numbers of our employees need to upskill and reskill in order to prepare for that future. And so we're, taking care of business today while also being ready for whatever happens tomorrow and beyond.
Exactly. So let's just touch maybe on the rise of remote and hybrid work, because I'm sure since COVID took place, that was probably part of the catalyst for updating this book. But I would just imagine that that impacts a lot of the development discussions that are happening in these organizations. So, what strategies can leaders use to better support their teams in these remote and hybrid settings?
Yeah, you are so right. One of the primary changes that we've experienced over the last 5 years is the rise of remote and hybrid. And certainly before COVID, there were folks who worked in that kind of a
Sure.
setting, but they were fewer and further between. Suddenly, COVID hits, and overnight, we've got managers who, in many cases, were struggling to help people grow when we were all together. And now they have to figure out how to make that happen when we're scattered to the winds. And whereas a lot of leaders have really developed great skills in terms of other parts of their leadership domain, like managing meetings online and that sort of thing, we found that most leaders have not really cracked the code when it comes to helping people grow remotely. And unfortunately, the research, underscores that. I mean, we're seeing that people who are co-located tend to enjoy more learning opportunities, more promotions, higher salary increases. And so that whole issue of proximity bias, that natural human tendency, unintended, to favor those with whom we, interact, the people you see, has created this out of sight, out of mind, and out of the development opportunity realm for those who aren't altogether co-located. And so my co-author Bev Kay and I decided, let's interview the best thinkers, the authors, the practitioners in this space, and figure out what's the secret sauce. What do you pour in there to the remote development equation? And there was no secret sauce, no silver bullet.
There
I'm
rarely is. We
sad.
want it so badly, but no.
I know, but the theme among all of these interviews was absolutely consistent, and it was intentionality.
Mm,
You got to do everything you would do well with your people who are co-located, but do it with way more intentionality.
mhm.
And so, how do you make visible to those who aren't present the invisible stuff that happens in the workplace? What kinds of remote rituals can you put in place that replicate some of those interactions? How do you, as a leader, even narrate some of what's behind the scenes and the undercurrents? You think about, I know as a young professional, just sitting in meetings, watching the big boys and girls interact. Oh my gosh, it was such an education to watch the
Yeah.
dynamics and the power and the influence and how they communicated. And so much of that is lost, if you're not in the room where it's happening, as it were. And so, as leaders, how do we narrate some of those dynamics and let people in on them? So, those are the kinds of things that we took on. We wrote a whole chapter on this in the new edition to help leaders think about how do you take what you're already doing or what you should already be doing and just add that level of intentionality to make sure at the end of the day we've evened the playing field so that everyone,
Mhm.
no matter where they work, when they work, they have the same opportunities for growth and development.
Yeah, so critical. And it goes back to your point, I think, too, about psychological safety. Because when you're not there cultivating that relationship day in and day out at the coffee machine, in the break room, or just walking by each other in the hall, you need that extra intentionality to develop relationships. And I think if I can think of like my worst 360-degree feedback story ever, it was a remote boss who showed up one day for some company meetings, and about no joke, 30 minutes before we had a meeting with some executives and that I was going to be doing some presenting in, sits me down, hands me 2 pages of written feedback about my performance, and is like, here, this is what the other team members are saying about you. Think about you. What do you think about this? How are we going to change this. And I was like, wait a second. First of all, we have a very big meeting coming up. I had no idea. I was completely blindsided. There was no, hey, we're going to talk about your development and, how things are going. And then to know that she went out and asked all these other people that I work with for feedback about me. And it was not like a big company wide 360 because I was not asked to give feedback on anyone else's performance. And I just remember, okay, just don't cry. Just don't cry. Just get through this. It's fine. Suck it up. You can get through this. And like the second the meeting was over, I just went to the bathroom. I quickly had my like tear fest and then had to really just try to put it out of my mind as much as possible and go into this other meeting looking professional and smiling. And it was just like the most soul sucking experience ever.
Oh, Karen, I can feel it. I mean, years later, these kinds of incidents, they stay with us, don't they?
Yes, they do.
Oh,
I mean, I've done a lot of work on it. So like, I mean, I release all that and I forgive them and I get it. They're just trying to protect themselves. And maybe they didn't see good examples of how to do this kind of stuff. So I will say I'm over it, but you're right. It does stay with you. And it's very easy to like my heart is racing right now. Like I feel that stress and anxiety from that moment.
Yes. And my heart is racing too, because it taps those same experiences I had that landed me in the bathroom crying as well. And I'm sure all of your listeners have had that as well. And here's the thing that's so sad about that particular situation. There is such power in helping peers support one another's growth, especially in a remote setting. You see your peers more, they know more about your performance, what's triggering you. They're in a much more, they've got greater visibility to what's going on than your manager does. And when we set that up constructively to turn development into a team sport, where we understand each other's goals, where we're skillful at providing meaningful feedback that's constructive and helps people, when there's that open dialogue among team members, to having team members contribute to your development directly, there's little that's more powerful than that.
Yeah.
When it's set up properly, when there's permission, when there's a psychological safety in the group. And so, the idea of 360s, I mean, that can be really great when it's set up to ensure growth.
Yes, agreed. And I've had some of those experiences where it was like, I got to pick the people who were giving feedback and weigh in on that. I got to get everybody was asked the exact same questions. There was qualitative and quantitative feedback. So you could really understand why somebody gave you a score. And that was a great example of 360 feedback. I'm still always not ready for the feedback because, we all think we're amazing, but when you really truly recognize that feedback is a gift and when it's coming from that right place, someone who really does value your contributions and wants to see you grow and help you, it makes those hard conversations and that bad feedback come through much better and a lot easier. And you do talk about that in your book too, that it's not always what you say, but how you say it.
It's so true. It makes all the difference in the world. And the thing about feedback that's so powerful, I think we forget that we wander around the world interacting, aware of our intentions. But the gap is the impact that we're having on others may be inconsistent with our intention. And if we can start thinking about feedback as just the information that helps us bridge that gap, suddenly it doesn't feel quite as soul sucking. It doesn't feel like that, punch in the gut. It doesn't feel personal. It really is just, okay, there's a disconnect between what I'm intending to do and how it's landing. So what adjustments do I need to make?
Yeah, I just feel like a weight off my shoulder after hearing you say that. I was like, that makes so much sense. Why don't we approach it that way?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a little nugget. I hope everyone was like, write that down. That was good stuff. So, oh my gosh, Julie, I could talk to you all day. This is fantastic. But I do have one final question that I ask all of my guests on Rock Your Reinvention. And that is, what would you say to the woman listening right now that knows she wants to make a career change, but just isn't sure how to get started?
Two things. Focus primarily, almost exclusively on what you want to do rather than what you want to be. We've been conditioned to think in terms of titles and roles and positions. And in today's workplace, first of all, they're becoming irrelevant. Things are dropping off, new ones are adding on. Who knows if what I want to be is even going to be there by the time I'm
Right.
ready. But it also starts to narrow our thinking. When we say, what do I want to do? And start unpacking that, that's a much more expansive conversation. And when we're focused on what we want to do, there's frequently the opportunity to invite some of those experiences into the envelope of our current role so
Mhm.
that we don't have to go anywhere. We don't have to change jobs. We can kind of try before you buy a little bit, do a little experimenting in a really safe space to figure out, because sometimes something sounds a lot better than it actually
Sure.
is. We've all found ourselves in that kind of a space. So really focusing in on what you want to do and then finding those win-win ways to propose the experiments that are going to let you have that experience, to try it
Mhm.
out and either nail it, this is it, or to choose again.
Oh, for sure. I mean, chief of staff sounded amazing. Not so much.
Oh, I
I mean,
know. And
I learned a
how
lot, but it was like, oh my gosh, this is
Oh,
not
I'm
a
sure.
place
I
for
can't
me.
imagine the headaches. Or how many people think they want to be supervisors and managers? They end up getting that role, and it's like, I don't even like people. Stop it. Get away. So yeah, those experiments, getting to try it on a little bit, see if it fits, how it feels, and either settle in or, as I said, choose again.
Great advice, as always. Julie, if people want to connect with you or they want to go get your book, where do they go to find all the great stuff?
Help Them Grow or Watch Them Go in the third edition is available at all your fine booksellers. And it actually comes with an interesting new AI powered tool. It's a book bot. So every reader has access to this AI tool where they can go in and plan conversations, they can rehearse conversations, get feedback, evaluate their efforts. So we're really excited about that. And there's more information about that at the book's website, help-them-grow.com, or on my website, juliewinklegiulioni.com.
Amazing. I love it. And I got to tell you, go get this book. I have highlighted it, just all kinds of passages. It's fantastic, and I'm going to be using it in my coaching practice because there are so many great questions in here that I'm like, "Oh, I can add this to my repertoire when I'm talking to clients about what they want to do next." And if their boss isn't going to have these career conversations, at least I can help them. So, great tips in here. Please, everybody, go get the book, connect with Julie, and whatever you do, take your own personal and professional development into your hands. Stop waiting for someone else to do something or change something, because you own this, and you'll be much happier when you're in control instead of waiting for someone else. Thank you so much, Julie, for being here. We really appreciate all your wisdom.
Oh, thank you, Karen. Appreciate you taking the time to visit with me.
Thanks for tuning in. I hope you're inspired to take action by committing to one of the tips or strategies we talked about in today's episode. If you want more accountability and support, I've got your back. Book a complimentary Empowered Exit Strategy call today. Visit KarenFreeland.com to learn more and book your 45-minute session. Until next time, stay fabulous.